Hello, this is The Trews. I'm Russell Brand, host of The Trews. Subscribe here. Do subscribe here to The Trews. Today, The Trews is the US Senate has rejected a bill to control the NSA, the agency that spies on ordinary Americans and ordinary citizens around the world. Let's learn about that now.
Senate Republicans defended the National Security Agency Tuesday, blocking a bill that would have ended the NSA's bulk collection of American phone records. But Senate Republicans say such measures are more critical than ever, given the growth of terrorism abroad and at home.
It's interesting. So when a bill is proposed to protect ordinary Americans and their privacy, the Senate, the people that represent, in a representative democracy, ordinary Americans, go, no way. You must have a really good reason for this, because surely ordinary people don't want to be spied on. Yeah, we do have a good reason. It's called terror. Dun, 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 terror. Dun, dun, dun. So, terrorism is used, this is the argument of the Trews today, terrorism is used to enforce further controls on domestic populations. When we're scared, we're more manageable. Edward Snowden, the heroic man who made the revelations, is still in exile in Russia, and that was a real opportunity when these leaks were made about the depth, breadth and capacity of the NSA to spy on ordinary people, to gather our text messages, our emails. This was an opportunity to have it reined in. It was rejected because of dun, 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 terror.
The legislation would have ended the NSA's collection of domestic calling records. Instead, the agency would have had to obtain a court order each time it wanted to analyze records.
So that would be a good thing, surely, to impose some control. Now, obviously, we're all scared of terrorism, as the name implies. It's bloody frightening. But is there a legitimate and real relationship between what's happening with ISIS and war in the Middle East and what's happening with the NSA and spying on ordinary Americans and British folk and German folk and everybody, really? When this bill has been under discussion, when this proposal to control the NSA has been in the Senate, these are the kind of things that US senators have been saying. Let's not have another repeat of 9/11, added Senator Dan Coates. Senator Patrick Leahy said there's no evidence to suggest that the NSA's surveillance program prevented a terrorist attack on the US. Anyway, all this is moot because the bill never made it. The bill was crushed and quashed, and the reason was, or the stated reason was, to prevent terror. So America and other governments, other governments around the world have a long history of saying that they're spying on us for our own benefit, that it's for our own good. America has a long history of misusing their authority. In the 60s, Democrats and Republicans used government institutions to intimidate and harass social activists who were fighting for causes such as civil rights and the war in Vietnam. The FBI obsessively wiretapped the Reverend Martin Luther King with the goal of finding evidence of him having communist affiliations. Martin Luther King's a very significant figure because he's sort of deified now. He is a modern icon and a modern hero, but at the time he was not. He was constantly attacked. The FBI had a really far-reaching and crazy campaign, including sending letters apparently from African Americans urging him to commit suicide. The reason for this was because Martin Luther King challenged the mainstream narrative. The mainstream narrative was that segregation is okay, inferior rights and racism is manageable. Martin Luther King challenged that argument, and because you can't challenge the truth, you have to attack Martin Luther King. You have to say, well, this guy has extramarital affairs, he's a communist. I don't know if he was a communist, and I think he did have extramarital affairs, but that doesn't change the truth of what he was saying. Hey, I think that people should have equal rights. People should have equal rights. Do you ever have affairs? Oh, yeah. People shouldn't have equal rights. There's no relationship between those two things. Lyndon Johnson and Richard Nixon agreed to have authorities bug and infiltrate anti-war activists. There's a long history in America, but also in the United Kingdom and in Germany, of the government using their powers to control voices that challenge their narrative. Watch out for that. So they're saying it's to protect us, but really it's to protect them. So it's an interesting use of fear. It's an interesting use of information. In Canada right now, after the tragic events in Ottawa, the Canadian government recently tabled a new bill that seeks to significantly expand the powers of the country's spy agency. So when something horrific happens, there's an understandable reaction of fear. But that fear is then utilised to implement social controls and measures that benefit the elites and the people that benefit from the system not being challenged. Noam Chomsky, who the CIA have admitted spying on, says governments should not have this capacity, but governments will use whatever technology is available to them to combat their primary enemy, which is their own population. We are our government's primary enemy, not ISIS, us. They're more challenged by us because they don't want us to get together, think, hang on a minute, this system isn't that beneficial, or even in ways that it is, it could certainly be improved. Why don't we organise differently? Well, if you'd like to organise differently, perhaps you'd like to have your head cut off by ISIS. Oh, Jesus, no, I wouldn't like to have my head cut off. Well, shut up then, and give us your phone bill. We've already got your phone bill, we don't need you to give it us. There's an attempt to repackage Edward Snowden as some sort of terrible traitor. The man is living literally in, well, like, like in exile. He can't go back to his country because of the laws they're using to persecute him. It was explained in the brilliant film Citizen 4, are sort of ancient, weird laws that are unwinnable for Edward Snowden. The legislation they're using would mean that you definitely have to go to prison. It's irrelevant whether what he was doing was for the right reasons, whether the things he were exposing were in public interest. The certain laws that they're using mean that that stuff is irrelevant. Snowden says the US has spied on the staff of prominent human rights organisations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. So, you know, they're not a threat, they're not terrorists. The NSA are able to use the tool to select an individual's metadata and content without judicial approval or prior review, so they can look at your text messages, my emails. In practical terms, this meant the agency tracked citizens not involved in any nefarious activities. And do you know that all of that data that's been captured, all of that data that's been compiled, has not led to one successful prosecution? Occasionally you hear people go, oh, if only you knew what we do. We do know what you do. You're spying on us. The NSA monitor the travel patterns of innocent EU members and other citizens not involved in terrorism or wrongdoing. Chomsky is fascinating on this subject, on a book that I just happen to have here, where the device of protection of the population is used by governments to impose their own will. He challenges that idea expertly. Chomsky says, take two prominent current examples, global warming and nuclear weapons. As any literate person is doubtless aware, these are dire threats to the security of the population. Turning to state policy, we find that it is committed to accelerating each of those threats in the interests of the primary concerns, protection of state power and of the concentrated private power that largely determines state policy. So they say it's for us, but if it were for us, can you do something about climate change? Can you do something about nuclear weapons? No, we make money from those things. Oh, so it's to make money then. Oh yeah, that's what we're really doing. Chomsky, in summary, once again in my book, says, as we're all surely aware, we now face the most ominous decisions in human history. We do. This is an important time for us. That's why information has to be controlled very, very carefully. It is imperative to sweep away the ideological clouds and face honestly and realistically the question of how policy decisions are made and what we can do to alter them before it's too late. We can't have any impact because we're spied upon, information is managed, people that try to expose problems like Edward Snowden are vilified. There is no way of us having purchase on political power. Even when a bill emerges to control the NSA, it's crushed in the Senate. Corporate power and state power will preserve themselves at any expense. That is the Trews. That is the true news. Subscribe here for more true news.
Is a tool that is abused to fool you and to leave you scared and confused. Trews is like the news. If the news was true, I want some Trews. Let's have some Trews.